Bonjour et bienvenue à ce deuxième jour de WIRE2022. J'espère que vous avez bien suivi les discussions hier parce qu'on va élaborer sur les thèmes aujourd'hui. My name is Jennifer Baker. I'm an EU policy journalist and I will be your MC today, guiding you through the discussions here in plenary and directing you and hearing feedback from all the breakout workshops that we are going to have. Welcome as well to those of you joining online across Europe and possibly even further afield. Remember, you can get involved in the discussion by using the hashtag WIRE2022. I'll be keeping an eye on Twitter, so if you have any questions during our plenary sessions, please feel free to put those there and I will try, time allowing, to get to our speakers with your questions. I'm sorry we're starting a little bit late this morning, but we have a packed schedule, so I hope you will find it entertaining, inspiring, and that you will be energized to go forth and spread the word about WIRE 2022 after today's discussions. We're going to kick off with a plenary session now. We're going to be talking about breakthrough innovation, but the key drivers and the role of the regions. So I hope everyone is ready to discuss that. Remember, if we've time, we'll take questions here in the room first as well for our speakers. But without any further ado, I will introduce you. We are delighted to have right next to me Jean-Luc Beylat, who is the VP Ecosystem at Nokia. Tommaso Borlevi is the Chief Technology at Lend-Lease. Christophe Clergaud is member of the Pays de la Loire Regional Council and member of the Committee of the Regions. And last but not least, Andrea Ruckstuhl is Head of Continental Europe, also at Lend-Lease. So, Jean-Luc, let me start with you. Give us your opening thoughts. What does innovation mean to you, and why is it important to be here at WIRE?
First, I'm very happy to be here at WIRE, specifically here in this wonderful building from the Centrale Supélec School inside the Université Paris-Saclay. It's usual for me to travel in Europe to talk about innovation, but to have this to do at 5 kilometers from home, it's very nice. And so this topic is the innovation, what we are talking about. It's very important, specifically right now. Before to talk about the how, I will have some wording about the why. And today we are, and it's well known by a lot of people, but it's important to reprecise the point. We are in the period where we have a lot of breakthrough, transformation of the society, transformation of industry, transformation of services. We need really to strongly and carefully address the climate change. We need really to address the transformation which is driven by the digital for industry and new services in a world context which is very complex. I don't want to talk about the war, but only also on the commercial pressures, the balance changing between US and China, and the role that we have to do and to address differently in Europe regarding our sovereignty, our ability really to manage our future. So behind all this, for all these reasons, we need really to accelerate innovation, which is a solution really for all this transformation. And to accelerate this innovation, we need to do this collectively. In fact, it's not done by one person, one company. It's really a process which is driven by ecosystem. When we are talking about new way for mobility, it's not only a concern about for highway infrastructure, car manufacturer, for local authorities. It's really all this transformation will be done by a collective approach. So it's why the strategy of developing a new process for ecosystem per region with different partners is really now on the top of the agenda of a lot of companies, and it's what we are doing in Nokia. In Nokia, we provide, to simplify, digital infrastructure, fiber, radio, everything which is useful for communication, access to internet. So it's basically what are our products and services. But in the future, we know that all this digital infrastructure will be used for mobility, for energy management, for the optimize the balance between the work and the life at home, etc., etc. So a big transformation, and we want to provide what we have, what we are able to do, and to work with partners really to have a sort of vertical solution in different segments. And all these points are done with an ecosystem approach, and the best way is really to invest in different regions, which is a topic, not only working with usual partners that we could have as a company, but also with SMEs, startup, academia, and early in the process research, because one key element also of our transformation is the speed. If we look the time now for the technology to reach between the laboratory and the real application, sometimes could be very short. So all these ecosystem partners are very, very important to be connected together in order to address this transformation. So just to conclude, to be short on this part, so it's really a key approach, a key organization right now, specifically for us in Europe, to address all the transformation in order to continue to have innovation on the table, and to really work differently and to invest not only in our company but inside the ecosystem. It's basically what I'm doing. It's my job, in fact.
Well, thank you, Tommaso. Let me ask you about your job. What does innovation, breakthrough innovation, mean to you, and what are you working on?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting us and this couple of days of great opportunity for networking and in-person event. I'm stressing that it's exciting to go back to in-person events. I'm very happy for people connected online, but more happy for people showing up. So you're asking me about my job, and it's really interesting because I've actually, since a couple of years, I had the luxury of the company I'm working for, Lend-Lease, and we're going to have Andrea talking more about the company, to give me kind of a sabbatical here to develop and create a new job and a new ecosystem focused on accelerating innovation. So through a global research process, took us over 2 years, we used one of our projects in Milan, called Milan Innovation District, to start a new type of company, and it's called Federated Innovation Network, and currently I'm the chairman, so right now that's kind of my job. And the mission of Federated Innovation is to accelerate the innovation creation process in regions, in ecosystem, by doing a number of things, but mainly is opening doors between large corporations and additionally creating pathways to connect competitors that usually would never talk and activate new project, new landscape. So we have a manifesto. Our key line is collaborate to compete, and we go cross-sector. So what we invite companies that typically are very good in deep tech, and they go in the direct line of innovation for aerospace or security, defense, to open up and talk about life science, urban digital technology. And we don't do it in a theoretical way, but we do it in a very practical way by connecting minds, connecting people, creating opportunities for them to use the ecosystem infrastructure and have an accelerated pathway to start projects. What we've seen is that really to deliver innovation, we have to remove all the red tapes and allow the people and the minds to connect and start and test projects. So the key drivers for innovation are usually access to talent, and here in this region you have plenty of it. You have connections and networking and capital. The thing that we're doing is to add a fourth leg, which is culture. It's a culture of openness, of sharing, of pre-competitive, and understanding that innovation is not something you do in isolation, even if you are a very large and powerful companies. So you think about the biggest companies, the Google of the world, they are now realizing that even to retain and foster their talent, they need to shift and innovate as a group. So that's kind of the message. Is I want to leave and wrap up this introduction part. For us, what we've learned is that innovation is really about a culture. So a region that fostered that culture creation is going to have a real advantage to attract and retain the best projects.
Thank you. Christophe, I think Tommaso has set it up quite nicely there for you in mentioning regions. Give me your perspective, your opening thoughts.
Merci, bonjour à toutes et à tous. Alors, je vais m'exprimer en français, puisque nous sommes sous présidence française en France, donc je vais être le vilain petit canard, donc je vous laisse le temps de prendre vos écouteurs. Je veux d'abord remercier les organisateurs pour donner la possibilité d'apporter ce témoignage, puis saluer mon collègue Marco Marcola, vice-président du comité des régions. Alors, je vais essayer de développer une idée très simple et qui va rejoindre ce que vient de dire Tommaso, qu'un des facteurs clés de l'innovation de rupture, c'est la qualité des écosystèmes locaux et régionaux et la manière dont ils encouragent la liberté créatrice. Alors, c'est vrai que dans ce débat, il y a une vieille distinction absurde que les régions feraient du capacity building, là où les politiques nationales ou européennes seraient les politiques d'excellence de la science et de l'innovation. Alors heureusement, les choses changent et merci à la commissaire Gabrielle d'avoir impulsé un changement important dans ce domaine. Et on se tourne petit à petit collectivement vers une vraie approche de place-based approach de la science et de l'innovation, ce qui est pour nous capital. Alors 3 idées pour cette introduction. Donc d'abord, nous ne construisons pas en tant que ville ou région des capacités, mais des écosystèmes fondés sur les nouvelles opportunités, les connexions, les rencontres, ce qu'a dit Tommaso. Pour prendre un exemple autour d'infrastructures de recherche nouvelles, disruptives, c'est une communauté d'acteurs qui se forme. Nous ont émergé des lieux d'innovation, des lieux de rencontre. Nous essayons d'être des territoires accueillants pour les talents et surtout peut-être développer des compétences transversales, aussi bien en sciences fondamentales, par exemple en mathématiques, qu'en sciences humaines ou avec des méthodes autour du digital ou du design. Deuxième idée, et là ça prolonge tout à fait ce qu'a dit Tommaso, nous faisons vivre des réseaux fondés sur la confiance et la bienveillance. Il faut faciliter la constitution des équipes, il faut développer une culture de la prise de risque, du droit à l'erreur, de la bienveillance dans les projets, être capable d'agir rapidement aux côtés des acteurs et de partager des risques dans des délais très brefs, et puis impulser vraiment des méthodes nouvelles, le design thinking, tester, prototyper, échouer, plutôt que d'avoir une vision d'abord de tout bien faire en une seule fois, et faire de nos territoires des early adopters, des territoires d'expérimentation pour les idées nouvelles portées par des acteurs de la science et de l'innovation. Et puis, dernière idée, eh bien, il faut parier sur les bons leaders et les bons projets. Et pour ça, il faut parier sur l'émergence et pas simplement sur la science ou l'innovation installée. Une des positions que je défends depuis longtemps, c'est que les appels à projets concurrentiels fondés sur l'excellence de la science établie sont le cimetière de l'innovation de rupture. Alors oui, il faut bien sûr accompagner ce qui est déjà excellent et fort, mais il faut aussi faire autrement. Faire autrement, ça veut dire quoi ? Récompenser les trajectoires d'émergence et de progrès et pas seulement l'excellence. Faire vivre des paris faits par les territoires, parfois contre l'avis des organismes de recherche ou des tutelles nationales. En Pays de la Loire, on a construit un écosystème sur les énergies marines renouvelables, un autre autour du cyclotron sur la recherche médicale contre l'avis initial des pouvoirs publics. Ensuite, faire vivre la science libre, donner du temps et de la liberté, y compris financer localement des chaires d'exploration et pas seulement des chaires industrielles ou partenariales, une forme d'ERC locale. Et l'ERC, c'est une très bonne chose. Et puis, dernier point, donner sa chance à la science ou aux innovateurs hétérodoxes, minoritaires, qui passent pour des fous furieux, alors que ça ne vient que des fous furieux, la rupture. Donc un conseil pour ceux qui gèrent des fonds, oui, mettez les 2/3 ou les 3/4 sur ce qui existe déjà, qui est très sérieux, très structuré, mais mettez 25% ou 1/3 sur de l'exploration, de la prise de risque maximum. Quand vous avez des évaluations de projets, s'il y a 3 fois la bonne note, quand vous êtes un financeur régional, ce n'est pas la peine de mettre de l'argent, il trouvera des financements ailleurs. S'il y a 3 fois la mauvaise note, c'est pas la peine de mettre de l'argent, c'est que c'est mauvais. Mais si vous avez 2 fois 18 et 1 fois 5, ou 1 fois 18 et 2 fois 7, eh bien il faut regarder, parce que c'est peut-être là qu'il y a quelque chose à explorer, mettre un peu d'argent, tester, aller plus loin si ça sert à quelque chose, ou arrêter si c'est une fausse piste, mais prendre des risques, prendre des risques, prendre des risques. Et finalement, ce sont les acteurs locaux qui prennent le plus de risques, pas les grandes institutions. Merci pour votre attention.
Merci, Christophe. Andrea, we heard there about the idea of wanting to create a culture, a welcoming culture, and also to build networks. Tell us a bit, for those who maybe don't know, in particular those watching online, about Lend-Lease and where Lend-Lease might fit into that hierarchy, that structure.
Hello? Yes, sorry. I just was told to wait 2 seconds, and I take risks. So I started earlier. So apologies, and thank you again having me here. Apologies, I speak in English. I do understand French, but I would avoid my French to you. I'm actually Swiss, live in Italy, and work for an Australian company, so I'm a bit all over in that sense. Lend-Lease, as I mentioned, is an Australian public company, and we have been specialized over the last few years in large urban regeneration projects. So we are an investor, a developer, and we manage long-term projects around the world. Why innovation is becoming a very important element for us? There are several points that were introduced before by the speaker that are very relevant. You know, one is the culture. I think it's fundamental. Large corporations today have a responsibility of really, looking at their role in the society further and further. We were lucky to have a founder many years ago. In 1970, our founder, Dick Dusseldorf, that was a European founder that moved to Australia, spoke about that not long after the 1970, large corporations should have cared about not only the profit of the shareholders, but the environmental and social impact. I think it was a bit early. This is actually something that now we have front and center in the company around the world. And that role definitely comes with the need of bringing a culture of openness, ability to attract talents. Means that we need to change the way we used to work. And the role of the company is really to take risks. I give you an example. We have announced that by 2040, which is 10 years before the Paris Agreement, we will have all projects and all operation absolute zero carbon. Means not ability to compensate. Just to give you a size of the challenge, we have in excess of $110 billion of projects around the world in all continents. And so a statement like this makes us really in trouble, to be honest. Because if I had all the money in the world today, I would not have the solution today. So what we have done is entrusted the ecosystems, the collaborations, the ideation, the new talents, the university, and the partners around the market to really work. And the ecosystems, as was said, we cannot do these alone. We need to work as a system to achieve these big goals. So I think that's one fundamental point for us. The second point where innovation is very important for us is that in the last 5 years, we have started to work in partnership with regions, cities, to develop places where innovation is at the heart. So we are working in several projects around the world, including the project in Milan that Tommaso mentioned, where we are building in partnership with the public authority on a long-term basis. Just to give you an idea, the Milan project is a 99-year contract we have with the region, the Central Ministry of Finance in Italy, and the city of Milan to build an ecosystem. So it's a very different role we're taking on board. And so we are outside the comfort zone. So we are taking risk to do something very different to a traditional developer. That's why we actually had the idea to create different initiatives and allow some of our people to really work for the ecosystems rather than directly for our company. And we are trying to engage in we're fortunate to be here. We had the pleasure to meet some of your colleagues here in Clés. Probably the last point I had is we're trying to build a network. So I think that the role of a network at European level is something that is very centered to me. Each of these initiatives or ecosystems become stronger if we connect them beyond country boundaries, beyond local places. I think what is our biggest opportunity today is strengthen the European network by really connecting minds, talents, and places like here to the rest of the places around Europe. I think that's part of what we want to do. We want to be a supporter or someone that can help these to happen across Europe.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that about networks, because it's something I hear very often from Digital Europe, the big umbrella body. One of their chief concerns is fragmentation, and how, despite our best efforts with the single market in Europe, we're still maybe lagging behind the US. So Jean-Luc, we've heard there from the last couple of speakers about what the main drivers or enablers of breakthrough innovation might be. I'm wondering, how are those distributed around Europe? Do we see that fragmentation, or do you think there are areas that are worthwhile sort of focusing on in one particular region and leaving other regions to have their own area of expertise? What's your view on how harmonized or how disparate it should be spread?
Well, okay. Now, in Europe, we have diversity, and I think it's a good thing. In fact, we have diversity in the way for the technology. So I don't want to speak about the map, but I think it's. But we have also diversity regarding the culture of innovation, and this part is very important. We have to learn from each other. So there are, if we look, for example, for Europe in North, there are a culture of innovation very strong. It was different, for example, to be transparent, it was different in France, which was really, it's a country really driven by big company, and it's a work of now 20 years, really, to transform the culture of innovation. And in fact, for innovation, in all fundamental book about innovation, we have 4 pillars which are critical for innovation. You have the entrepreneurship culture, which is also in Europe different level, so it's an element. We need money. There is no innovation without money. You need skill, competencies, and you need ecosystem. When you have all these 4 pillars, like for example in Israel, Silicon Valley, or in some in other places, so you are very strong to in terms of innovation. And what is nice in Europe that in some place we have all the 4 pillars, but we have the weight of the different pillars different according to the countries. And it's why I think that we need really, in terms of strategy for innovation, to work together. Because our challenge, our potential is really Europe. We could think about region, we could have to be proud about our country, but the reality of the transformation for us, for everything, regarding the climate, regarding all the, it's really inside Europe. So we need to play with these 4 pillars to take the best. For example, I push a lot that we have a connection between the different regions to really intensify the money, the financing, which is at a weakness for Europe if we compare to US or to China. So it's a key element. Skill, competencies, it's a key element. Today there is clearly a strong pressure to attract competencies, and we are quite good at large in Europe for these competencies, but there is some distribution, so we need to have this flexibility in Europe regarding the skill and the competencies. And obviously the ecosystem, so there are some countries in Europe that are a strong culture to develop ecosystem, and this is also a key element. So what we have to do, in fact, it's really to think at European level but you use all the different level, regional level, country level, and European, to have a sort of coordination. And if I have to say, today we don't have it on the paper. All people say we are coordinated, we are all here, but in reality, for people involved in innovation, we see that we don't have a lot of coordination with the different level. In France, we don't have a coordination between region and country. Sorry to say that, but it's a reality. But in Europe, we have big tools, but it's really a top-down approach. We need really, for the future, because it's a key challenge for us to increase this coordination between these different level of decision, enabler, really to manage the transformation. Why? Because we need to have this coordination with the different pillars. In Italy, to drive the innovation, they need to complete with skills which are outside Italy. It's the same for France. It's the same also for Germany. It's the same also for countries in Europe, where they have the population, they have less population and less potential to attract some skills. So we need to complete each other, and it's really the challenge that we have collectively to address. It's better that to see that, okay, this area will be good for, I don't know, Industry 4.0, this area will be very efficient for mobility, etc. Because at the end, for the reality, if we need to find a solution for the mobility of tomorrow, it's at the European level. We will not have a specific case for France and Germany.
Well, Tommaso, I'm interested to know from a technological point of view, how does Europe measure up to the rest of the world? And how do you measure that? What sort of metrics would you use?
Okay, so then I want to go back to one comment and the other, Jean-Luc. Right now, the game on technology is a global game. So it's very difficult to just answer this question at the European level, because everything you do, from a car, on the way here we saw, Stellantis, R&D center, everything, it's a global game. Especially a piece of technology comes from everywhere. I tell this story that I found fascinating. Over 90% of the dishwashers and the washing machine in the world, the latch system, the opening system that prevent you to open up while it's working, is manufactured, designed by a small company in Milan, which just learned, which is called Rôle, that is a family company. And in China, they were not able to copy that. They try and then it breaks. So innovation is global. And technology, there's been a lot of expertise and traditional development. Then there are the disruptive technologies where location is almost random. I spent many years in the US, and it's fascinating, for example, how Silicon Valley, because of the resources that Jean-Luc mentioned and the ecosystem, was quick to become the global leader in a new technology, autonomous vehicles and autonomous driving systems. There was no reason why it should be there versus Europe or other locations. It's just that they were fast to get on this track. They had the resource, the time, the money. They acquired the best companies from Israel and Europe, and now that's the ecosystem. And if you look how that grows, is exponential. So in terms of technology, Europe has to make and pick our battles. And we have to, in order to win their battles, we have to have one mission, very driven, and decide what we want to do. Definitely, from what I've seen, and we are on a global stage every day, so we perceive that this battle for eco battle, for quality of life through improving the condition of our planet, is definitely a battle that Europe has some chances. Historically, culturally, the talents in Europe are excited about these challenges. So that could be a battle that if we decide as a group, we can then find the technology, put in place, scale up the technologies, and win it and become a leader. So going back to the point I want to say about Jean-Luc, I think in terms of resources and coordination in Europe, there's much more than we think. The problem is that it doesn't show up, and especially living abroad and seeing Europe, you always see, an Italian venture, a French startup, German, and so on. So sometimes it might be similar, like just a branding exercise. I've been living in New York. I started a few companies there. And if you talk with the authorities, there is a brand you can get on your company. It's called Made in NYC. And there is a process. They kind of verify your company, give you some advice. It's very simple, it's free. But then you're part of a larger ecosystem, and then you're part of events, and then you use to grow that brand. And it doesn't care if you are, Brooklyn or Manhattan or Queens, wherever. So what if, as a Europe, we create a brand which is a European innovation project? No more regional, and talent could be mixed up. And with that, we go on the global stage. I think that would be very powerful, because the brand European is very strong in design, fashion, quality of life, food. Everywhere in the world, they are jealous about what we have. But on innovation, we are fragmented in our messaging. So it might be as simple as that, to pick a number of successful initiatives, brand them as European, and make them unicorns, leveraging public and private resources.
I think if we all knew how to grow a unicorn, we would. So it's not quite so easy. Andrea, let me build a little on what Tommaso said about Silicon Valley being fast. We can't put the genie back in the bottle now. And there are regulatory efforts to try and level the playing field or level up. And I want to tie that to, because one of our workshops is on regulatory environment. What do you think that might look like if we are to try and catch up, or do we go our own way?
I think it's actually, as we, Tommaso mentioned, Silicon Valley has got the great and the brightest light, but if you go down and understand what is happening there, I have to say it's not that bright, or the future is not that clear as well. We have few projects in Silicon Valley, and a lot of the challengers are coming to them in terms of, which is also part of some of the comments about the inclusiveness of that model. So a lot of the work we're doing is really working with the local cities and local towns, because they are, the cost of living, the quality of living has really deteriorated, and it's becoming a place where you can live only if you're rich. And is that the model of society that we are really bringing forward? That's where I think Europe has a fantastic opportunity and advantage to show the world the ability to innovate, but caring about the society. I think this is the model we created, this part of the world, and I think that's where I think the strength of the relationship between public and private here can make the difference. I think US, it's driven by private. Okay, it's venture capital, private organizations. They are as large as governments, if you take the top tech company, but it's still missing that relationship. So it's a bit broken. In Europe, actually, is different. I think we have good institutions. Large corporations. Yes, we still have to work on finance, and I know we have a workshop that will discuss this later. But I think it's a great position to be in, to actually deploy or even further strengthen this partnership between public and private. And that partnership can allow you to do things. For example, in Europe, we could have and decide to have in certain locations sandbox. So we can actually create places with special rules. So we can actually agree with the public how we really can test ideas. That means that we change temporary some regulatory constraints and say we are declaring that this is a spatial situations to test the innovation. And by doing so, we don't just apply to the entire society with the risk of impact with people, but we create the right environment for public and private collaboration to really test new ways of doing. This can be in the healthcare systems. We all talk about data related to our health. And, this is the biggest opportunity. How do we do that without breaking the rules of privacy and protections of individuals? But if we find all these rules, we are going to change the world. And it's actually going to be, in my view, most likely to happen in Europe than in the US or Asia, because the model is more sustainable. We have learned to deal with different countries, different politics, different tax systems, different and we are the master of the alignment. So let's just use what we learn to draw that into the innovation, and we're going to be the champions, in my view.
Well, that reminds me of the phrase, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go as a group, go together. And Christophe, to build on that idea, we talked a little bit about education, policy, funding, things like that. But I also want you to reflect on the specific actions governments might be able to take to ensure social acceptance of breakthrough innovation, taking this idea that it is a society together that must foster innovation.
So perhaps first thing, to come back to places, because this is the key element. If you're able to develop new places, you develop new networks, new interaction, new cooperation. If you have a community of actors developing breakthrough innovation, then you can include social actors, citizens, associations, trade unions at the beginning of innovation, and then help them to become actors of this process. And then the question of acceptance is not at all the same one. But it's quite impossible to beat it at European or national level. You must beat it in a community. And that's a key question. When we are talking about ecosystems, what are we talking about? We have nice debate at European level. Ecosystem, yes, we have ecosystems. Networks at European level. No, we are not talking about that. We are talking about community of actors. Connection, yes, fantastic. We have platform to connect people. No, we are talking about connection at local level and how local actors, local and regional ecosystem define by themselves how they want to connect with others in Europe, not only around technologies, but also around common goals, common target, common vision of the future we have to create together. And this brings to social acceptance. And last thing, and it's a link with what Marco, I think, will say about missions. When you have to face a very important transformation, a radical transformation, the first method is to say we are at point A, and then we have to build a path to point B. And then how we go there step by step. And then if you do that, it's only dominant actors who will lead this path. Private and dominant actors, biggest cities, biggest regions. If you think differently, then what could be point B? How we can invent together point B? Where we want to go together? And if you build a common vision of point B, then you can invent new solution, disruptive path to success in this new travel, collective, social, and political travel. This is my answer to your question.
And it's a very good answer indeed. Thank you. Well, this was to whet your appetite for the workshops to come. So I'm going to very rapidly ask each of you to select one workshop that's your favorite and tell me why. I'm going to read them out again. The first one is access to finance. The next one is regulatory environment. The workshop number 3 is talent creation, development, and retention. And workshop number 4 is related to what we just spoke about, social acceptance of breakthrough innovations. So I'm going to put you on the spot first, Jean-Luc. Which of those workshops appeals to you most and why?
In fact, obviously, all the program is interesting. You have to stay here. But if I have to choose, I will say talent, skill. Because I think it first is critical. And secondly, it's maybe where we could do the difference in Europe.
Christophe?
A regulatory issue, very specific one, and it's about experimentation, early adopter. If a city wants to buy a disruptive innovation, you have only one method, it's innovative procurement. It's a very difficult and complex European tool, and we have to change that, to open the facilities for early adopters and for local experimentation.
Andrea?
Hello. I will be on finance, so I will skip that. But to say that, you know, it's boring. No, it's going to be fascinating. So please join. But I think the acceptance is society. I think it will actually be very important to transform, as we said, and everybody mentioned the culture, and actually define together where we want to go. And so how do we actually use that tool to strengthen the direction? So that would be my preference.
So actually, you know, I'm not going to mention finance. I'm, you know, on the panel, but I would love to skip the panel to be on the talent and in the audience, because I agree with Jean-Luc. I mean, there's no innovation if you don't start from talent. When we build these cities, I just give you a plug. We develop a video game, and one of the names that was under consideration was called Regeneration Alpha. And Generation Alpha is the generation of kids born between 2010 and 2020. That's the generation that we have to, you know, excite, and they will make the talent of the future. And they are approaching their, you know, their life in these days. So talent is really number 1, 2, 3. So I will, you know, be happy to work, see the workshop.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. And I will say, do pick your workshop, and we will hear back from rapporteurs after lunch. So if you miss one, you're still going to get the opportunity to hear about it. A big round of applause. Thank you for starting today.